It started as an ordinary Saturday afternoon, the kind where the house smelled of laundry detergent and leftover pancakes. I was sprawled on the couch scrolling through my phone when Jake, my older brother, suddenly burst out laughing with his friends. They were in the kitchen, loud enough for their voices to carry across the house. At first, I ignored it. But then I heard Jake say the words that would stick to me like thorns. "Lily's not even really one of us. She's adopted. Mom and Dad just don't talk about it." The room erupted in laughter. His friends chimed in, making it worse. "No wonder she doesn't look like you," one of them jeered. I froze, the phone slipping from my hand. My heart hammered so loudly I could barely hear the rest. It was supposed to be a joke, a cruel, thoughtless jab, but something about the way Jake said it, like he almost believed it, lodged in my chest like a knife. I stormed into the kitchen, my face burning. "What did you just say?" Jake grinned, clearly amused by my reaction. "Relax, Lily. It was a joke." "Don't be so sensitive," but it didn't feel like a joke. Not when I looked at Karen and Thomas later that evening at dinner and noticed how they avoided my eyes. How silence stretched between bites. I had always felt a little out of place. My hazel eyes didn't quite match their deep brown, and my curls stood out against their straight hair. Small differences I'd brushed off my whole life suddenly felt like giant cracks. That night, lying in bed, Jake's words echoed in my head. Adopted. Was it really just a joke? Or was it the truth no one wanted to tell me? I didn't know then, but that single moment would unravel everything I thought I knew about who I was. And the truth was far darker than a cruel joke. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jake's smirk, heard his words, and felt that hollow ache in my chest. By morning, I'd convinced myself that I couldn't just ignore it. I needed answers. At breakfast, the air was strangely heavy. Karen busied herself at the stove, her back to me, while Thomas scrolled through his phone. Jake shoveled cereal into his mouth. Acting like nothing had happened, I cleared my throat. "So, Jake said something yesterday." Karen stiffened, her spatula pausing mid-air. Thomas looked up briefly, then back down at his screen. "He said I was adopted." My voice cracked, but I pressed on. "Is that true?" The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Karen turned around, her smile too forced. "Oh, Lily, you know how your brother jokes. Don't let him get under your skin." But her eyes didn't meet mine. Jake snickered into his bowl. "Told you, it was just a joke." My stomach twisted. Their words said one thing, but their faces told another story. Later that afternoon, I met Ella at the park. She noticed my pale face instantly. "Lily, what's wrong?" I poured it all out. The joke, the silence, the way my parents wouldn't look me in the eye. Ella frowned deeply. "That doesn't sound like a joke. That sounds like something they don't want to talk about." Her words mirrored my fears. That evening, while everyone was distracted in the living room, I crept upstairs to the attic. Dusty boxes stacked high, the smell of old cardboard and cedar filling the air. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but some instinct told me the answers were here. I dug through yearbooks, old clothes, photo albums, until one box caught my eye. Inside, beneath yellowed newspaper clippings, was a hospital bracelet. The tag read, "Baby girl, June 14th, my birthday." But the last name written wasn't ours. The air whooshed out of my lungs. My hands shook so violently I almost dropped it. This wasn't a joke. Jake hadn't been entirely wrong. And suddenly, I wasn't sure who I really was anymore. I sat on the attic floor for what felt like hours, clutching that tiny hospital bracelet like it was a grenade about to explode. The name scrawled on it wasn't ours. It was something foreign, unfamiliar, and yet it was tied to me. By the time I went downstairs, my heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Karen was folding laundry on the couch, humming softly while Thomas read the newspaper. They looked so normal, like nothing had shifted. But to me, everything had. I held up the bracelet. What is this? Karen's humming stopped. Her eyes darted to the object in my hand, then quickly to Thomas. His paper crinkled as he lowered it, his expression unreadable. Where did you find that? Karen whispered. In the attic. Why does it have my birthday but a different last name? My voice shook. Am I adopted? The silence was suffocating. Finally, Thomas cleared his throat, his voice low. Lily, sometimes families keep things private for a reason. That's not an answer, I shouted, the tears burning hot. I deserve to know the truth. Jake sauntered in at that moment, smirking like he'd been waiting for this explosion. See? Told you. You've always been the odd one out. Jake, enough, Thomas snapped. But the damage was already done. My chest felt like it was caving in. I ran upstairs, slamming the door, dialing Ella's number with trembling hands. She answered on the first ring. Lily? I found proof, I whispered, trying to keep my sobs quiet. A hospital bracelet. Different name. They won't give me answers. Ella's voice was steady, grounding me. Okay, listen. If they won't talk, then you need facts, real ones. We can do a DNA test. That way, no more guessing. Her suggestion hit me like a lightning bolt. A DNA test. The truth, undeniable and unchangeable. I wiped my face, breathing hard. Okay, you're right. I'll do it that night, lying awake in the dark. I clutched the bracelet under my pillow. My whole life felt like it was unraveling, and yet a strange determination was forming. No more secrets, no more jokes. I was going to find out who I really was, even if it destroyed everything. The next morning, I couldn't even look at my parents. Every smile, every good morning felt fake now, like a mask covering something rotten underneath. I barely touched my cereal, muttering an excuse about homework before rushing back upstairs. As soon as I was alone, I pulled out my laptop. My hands shook while I typed, but determination fueled me. Within minutes, I was on a site offering at-home DNA test kits. Simple, discreet, and delivered in days. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the Order Now button. Once I did this, there was no turning back. But then I pictured Jake's smug grin, Karen's guilty eyes, Thomas's evasive words. With a deep breath, I clicked. When the confirmation email pinged in my inbox, my heart raced. The truth was officially on its way. That evening, Ella came over. She was the only person I could trust with this. I showed her the order receipt, and her eyes widened. You actually did it, she whispered. I have to, I said firmly. They'll never tell me. This is the only way, Ella nodded, squeezing my hand. Then I'll be with you every step. Meanwhile, Jake seemed to sense something was up. He kept throwing sly remarks at dinner. Planning any surprises, sis? Or just snooping around again? I bit my tongue so hard it nearly bled, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Karen tried to keep things normal, asking about school, fussing over the laundry, but her eyes lingered on me too long, like she knew I'd uncovered more than I should have. Thomas stayed quiet, barely looking at me at all. Days felt like weeks as I waited for the kit to arrive. Each morning, I rushed to the mailbox, my stomach knotting tighter. Finally, one crisp envelope arrived, small and unassuming, yet heavier than any package I'd ever held. I tore it open, my hands trembling. Inside, the kit was simple. Swabs, instructions, a prepaid envelope. Ella sat beside me as I read the steps. This is it, I whispered. Somehow the air felt heavier, as if the walls themselves knew my entire life was about to change. The kit sat on my desk like a ticking time bomb. I read the instructions over and over, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. It felt surreal, like this tiny plastic tube could hold the answer to everything I'd been wondering my whole life. Ella perched on my bed, watching me nervously. You sure you're ready for this? I nodded, though my throat was dry. I have to be. I swabbed my cheek, sealed the sample, and placed it in the return envelope. My fingers hovered before I finally pressed the flap closed. It was done. The next morning, before anyone woke up, I slipped the envelope into the mailbox. My heart hammered the whole time, terrified Jake would catch me or that Karen or Thomas would notice, but the house remained quiet, and for the first time in days, I felt like I'd taken control. What I hadn't anticipated was the waiting. The site said 2 to 3 weeks for results. 2 to 3 weeks of pretending everything was fine while my insides churned with questions. Every glance from Karen felt sharper, every silence from Thomas heavier. Even Jake seemed more smug, tossing casual insults at me like bait. I refused to bite, but it was getting harder each day. At night, I lay awake replaying every memory, every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every birthday. Were those moments real love? Or were they just pity? Ella called me constantly, checking in. Don't spiral, Lily. Whatever the results say, you're still you. Her words helped, but they didn't quiet the storm in my chest. One evening, as I was walking back from school, I spotted Mr. Harris, our neighbor, watering his garden. He looked up and gave me that familiar kind smile. For some reason, something in his eyes made me stop. You okay, kiddo? He asked. I almost said yes, the automatic response, but instead, the words slipped out. Mr. Harris, do you know if I'm adopted? His hand froze midair. For a split second, his face revealed something, a flicker of recognition, of guilt. And in that moment, I realized the truth wasn't just in my parents' hands. Other people knew too. Mr. Harris set down the hose, his lips pressed tightly together. For a moment, I thought he'd pretend he hadn't heard me, but then he sighed, shoulders sagging as though the weight of years had suddenly pressed down. Lily, he said softly, some questions don't have simple answers. My heart skipped. That's not a no. He studied me, his weathered face filled with something I couldn't quite name. Regret, sadness, guilt. I've known your family a long time, longer than you've been alive, and I'll just say this. Sometimes parents keep secrets thinking they're protecting their kids. But secrets have a way of coming out. The words chilled me. So you do know something. Mr. Harris hesitated before shaking his head. It's not my place, Lily. That truth has to come from them. Frustration bubbled in my chest. But they won't tell me anything. His eyes softened. Then you'll have to be strong enough to face it when the time comes. I walked home with his words echoing in my mind, more confused than ever. If Mr. Harris knew, then this wasn't just paranoia. There was something real here, something big. That night at dinner, I studied Karen and Thomas like a detective eyeing suspects. Every twitch, every forced smile felt like a clue. Jake, of course, couldn't resist poking at me. Still brooding, sis? Careful, you'll give yourself wrinkles. I slammed my fork down, glaring at him. Why do you keep bringing it up? Why does it matter so much to you? He shrugged, smirking. Maybe because it's funny watching you squirm. But deep down, I couldn't shake the suspicion that he knew more than he let on. Later, in my room, I called Ella again. Even Mr. Harris acted weird when I asked him. He basically admitted something's off. Ella was quiet for a moment before saying, Then the DNA test is the only way. Once you get those results, they can't deny anything anymore. I hugged the phone to my chest after we hung up, staring at the ceiling. The waiting was eating me alive, but Mr. Harris's words replayed over and over. Secrets don't stay buried forever. And I was about to dig one up that could change everything. The email came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in class, half listening to the teacher drone on about equations, when my phone buzzed. My breath caught in my throat the moment I saw the subject line. Your DNA results are ready. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. My entire body buzzed with nerves as I stared at the notification, unable to open it in front of everyone. As soon as the bell rang, I bolted from the room and ran straight to the library, the quietest corner I could find. With trembling fingers, I logged in. The words swam before my eyes. You are not biologically related to Karen or Thomas. I reread the sentence over and over, praying I had misunderstood. But it didn't change. The percentages, the matches, the cold scientific proof, none of it could be argued with. My breath came out in ragged gasps. The joke wasn't a joke. Jake's cruel words had been the truth all along. I felt the walls close in around me, so I did the only thing I could think of. I called Ella. She picked up instantly. "Lily? What's wrong?" "They're not my parents," I whispered, my voice breaking. "The test. It says I'm not related to them." There was silence on the other end, then a sharp inhale. "Oh my God, Lily!" Tears blurred my vision as I slid down against the library wall, my whole body trembling. My life, my family, everything I thought I knew was a lie. Ella's voice was gentle, steady. "Listen to me. This doesn't change who you are, but it does mean your parents owe you the truth. You can't let them hide it anymore." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. My chest felt hollow, my pulse erratic. That evening, I avoided everyone, eating dinner in silence, staring at Karen and Thomas with new eyes. They weren't just hiding something, they had stolen my truth. And now I couldn't pretend anymore. The test had ripped the mask away, and I was determined to make them finally admit it. I couldn't hold it in any longer. After dinner, while Jake clattered off to his room, I placed my phone on the table, the DNA results glowing on the screen. Karen's smile faltered the second she saw the bold headline. Thomas's fork clattered against his plate. "Care to explain this?" I demanded, my voice shaking but loud enough to echo through the kitchen. Karen's hands flew to her mouth. "Oh, Lily!" Thomas rubbed his temples, muttering, "You weren't supposed to find out like this." My blood boiled. "So it's true. You lied to me my entire life." Karen reached out, but I pulled back. "Sweetheart, we wanted to protect you." "Protect me?" My voice cracked into a near scream. "From what?" "From knowing who I really am." For once, Thomas's calm facade shattered. He slammed his fist against the table, making me flinch. "We did what we had to do. You don't understand, then make me understand," I shot back, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Tell me the truth." All of it. The room was thick with tension, the air almost too heavy to breathe. Finally, Karen sank into her chair, her shoulders trembling. "You weren't adopted the way you think," she whispered. "You were given to us." The words sent a chill crawling down my spine. "Given to you? By who?" Karen's eyes flicked toward Thomas, silently pleading. He closed his eyes before speaking, his voice rough. "Your biological mother couldn't keep you. She was someone we knew. And when she left, she begged us to raise you as our own." My pulse raced, my stomach twisting violently. "Who was she?" Neither of them answered. Their silence was louder than any confession. I pushed back from the table, my chair screeching against the tile. "You've lied to me for 17 years, and you still won't tell me the whole truth." Karen sobbed quietly. Thomas stared at the floor, and for the first time, I realized the people I had called my parents were strangers, and somewhere out there was someone who had abandoned me or saved me. I wasn't sure which hurt more. I barely slept that night. My mind spun in circles, replaying their words again and again. Given to us, someone we knew. That meant my biological mother wasn't some faceless stranger. She had been close enough to touch their lives. By morning, I couldn't stand the silence of our house anymore. I slipped out and walked to Ella's place. The second she opened the door, I fell into her arms, tears spilling hot down my face. Between sobs, I told her everything. The DNA results, the confrontation, the half-truths my parents had tossed at me like scraps. Ella held me until my breathing steadied, then said firmly, "If they won't tell you who she was, we'll find out ourselves." Her determination lit a spark in me. We spent the next few hours scouring old yearbooks, local archives online, even social media pages tied to my parents' younger years. But every lead felt like a dead end, until one photo stopped me cold. It was an old neighborhood barbecue picture posted years ago by Mr. Harris. In the faded snapshot, Karen and Thomas stood smiling with younger versions of themselves. And beside them, a woman I didn't recognize. She had my eyes, my exact hazel eyes. Ella leaned closer, whispering, "Lily, that has to be her." My hands shook as I zoomed in, studying every feature, the curve of her smile, the shape of her face. It was like staring into a mirror of an older version of me. Suddenly, Mr. Harris's odd reaction when I'd asked him about being adopted made sense. He had known her. I knew what I had to do. The next day, I walked straight to Mr. Harris's front porch and rang the bell, my heart pounding in my chest. He opened the door, his kind eyes instantly clouding with guilt when he saw me. "You knew her, didn't you?" I asked, my voice trembling but firm. "The woman who gave me up. She was at that barbecue. Who was she, Mr. Harris?" He hesitated, gripping the doorframe, and I knew before he even answered that he was about to change everything I thought I knew about my past. Mr. Harris's hand tightened on the doorframe. For a moment, he looked older than I'd ever seen him, his eyes carrying the weight of a secret he'd buried too long. "Come inside, Lily," he said quietly. I followed him into the living room, my heart racing. He sat heavily in his chair, staring at the floor before finally meeting my eyes. "The woman in that photo," he began. "Her name was Rachel. She was your mother's sister." The air left my lungs in one sharp gasp. "My mother's sister." He nodded slowly. "Rachel lived a hard life. She made choices that led her down dangerous paths. Drugs, bad relationships. When she became pregnant with you, she wasn't in any shape to raise a child. Karen and Thomas stepped in. They promised to protect you, to give you the life Rachel couldn't." My chest tightened as his words sank in. My biological mother wasn't just some stranger. She was family. Karen's own sister. Mr. Harris sighed. "They thought raising you as their own and never telling you was the kindest option. They didn't want you to feel abandoned, but instead, I felt crushed, betrayed. So my whole life was a lie. My aunt is actually my mother, and my parents," I choked on the word, "are my aunt and uncle." Mr. Harris's eyes softened. "They may not be your birth parents, but don't doubt that they loved you. They sacrificed to raise you. That doesn't erase the truth, but it matters." Tears blurred my vision. "Why didn't they just tell me?" "Because they were afraid," he said simply. "Afraid of losing you." I stumbled out of his house, my mind a whirlwind. Everything felt upside down. Karen wasn't just my mother, she was my aunt. Thomas wasn't my father, he was my uncle. And Rachel, the woman with my eyes, had vanished from my life before I'd even understood what life was. That night, I stood in front of Karen and Thomas, my voice trembling but firm. "I know everything about Rachel, about me." Their tears told me it was true. I didn't know if I could forgive them yet, but for the first time, I finally knew who I was, and that truth, no matter how painful, was mine.